One of the most important decisions made by Musk at the beginning of the company's journey was that the company should manufacture key components itself, rather than assembling a car from hundreds of parts from different suppliers. Vertical integration made it possible to control quality, costs, supply chains, and the company's overall destiny. Creating a good car was important, but it turned out to be even more important to organize the manufacturing processes and build factories capable of providing mass production of components, from batteries to the body. As it turned out, at the start, none of the technologies that existed at the prototype stage were suitable for mass production. Everything had to be practically completely redone. At the beginning of the journey, the company Tesla was plagued by a logistical nightmare. At the beginning of the journey, a battery cell cost $1.50. But by the time the finished battery made it into the customer's car, it had already traveled around the world. As a result, the cost of the battery rose to $15,000. And finally, there wasn't even a list of materials and components from which the car was supposed to be made. When, at a certain point in the company's growth, one of Tesla's investors, Michael Marks, replaced Martin Eberhard as chief executive officer, the strategy of vertical integration in production was his idea. However, Elon Musk's unwillingness to give Michael Marks any real freedom in decision-making brought this cooperation to nothing. Also, the naturally friendly Marks had a hard time tolerating Musk's manner of communicating with people. Elon is not a very pleasant person and treated people badly, says Michael Marks, who was shocked that Musk hadn't read most of the novels written by his first wife, the writer Justine. People don't want to tell him the truth because he intimidates them. He can be very combative and harsh. I still wonder if what he calls Asperger's syndrome can explain or justify some of his actions. Maybe, in some cases, when it comes to running a company where the mission is more important than individual traits, such an attitude can even be useful. But Musk, probably, is somewhere on the autism spectrum, so I think he just doesn't have a connection with people. In the end, by the end of 2008, Musk himself took the position of chief executive officer of Tesla. The desire to be everyone's friend leads to you caring too much about the emotions of the person sitting in front of you, instead of caring about the success of the whole enterprise, he told Michael Marks. Because of this approach, a lot more people can suffer. All the difficulties, both with and without, Musk went through without trying to seek anyone's help or support. Exactly the same way, not letting anything out. Musk experienced the death of his first newborn son in 2002, in the difficult year of 2008. Against the backdrop of all the business troubles, Musk was also in the process of divorcing his first wife, Justin Wilson. The main thing she felt he lacked was compassion. It was precisely the lack of empathy that always made Justin reflect. But Musk continued to see feelings as something produced by the brain. Thanks to his high intelligence, he learned to be very perceptive, but his emotions remained closed off. And yet, despite being close to bankruptcy in 2008, Tesla managed to survive. In May 2009, after receiving $50 million in investments from Daimler, and then a loan of $465 million from the United States Department of Energy, Musk was able to start producing a mass-market four-door sedan costing $60,000. It became the first car that engineers could treat as software, not just hardware. We were amazed that we could add new features, including acceleration, to cars that had already been purchased, making them even better over the years than they were when bought, says Musk. The Model 3 finally surpassed the milestone planned by Musk of producing 5,000 cars a week in July 2018 and became the best-selling car in the world. And in 2019, they announced an electric pickup. And just recently, they started fully selling their pickup. However, the most budget-friendly version will only start being delivered to customers in 2025. This is a rear-wheel drive vehicle. Prices start at $61,000, and they promise that a full charge of the pickup will last for about 400 kilometers. Two other versions will be delivered to customers in 2024. These are all-wheel drive vehicles with two electric motors. They cost $80,000 and $100,000 respectively. The charge will last for about 550 and 515 kilometers respectively. The all-wheel drive version with 2 electric motors can accelerate to 100 kilometers per hour in 4.1 seconds, with a top speed of about 180 kilometers per hour. The power is 600 horsepower. The vehicle can tow up to 5 tons. The top version, Cybertruck, is a vehicle with 3 electric motors that can accelerate to 62 miles h in 2.6 seconds. The maximum speed is about 210 kilometers per hour. The power is 845 horsepower. The maximum speed is about 210 kilometers per hour. The power is 845 horsepower. At the presentation, they showed a video of how Cybertruck, during a short race, overtook a 911 while towing another 911. By default, the car will be gray, but for $6,000 and $0.5 buyers can have it covered with a white or black wrap. Among other options, there's a tent in the body for $3,000 and floor mats in the cabin for $300. For $55, you can buy a sticker that imitates a crack in the glass. This refers to the 2019 presentation. At that time, Elon Musk claimed that the car could withstand shots from a 9mm pistol, but when a metal ball was thrown at the glass, it cracked. All cars will get a new bidirectional charging feature. It will allow you to charge power tools or even an entire house from the car, using the Cybertruck as a generator. You can also charge one car from another. The car can withstand shots from small-caliber firearms. At the event, they showed how the Cybertruck was shot at with a pistol and a Thompson submachine gun, and the bullets couldn't penetrate the body. Since the Cybertruck has already started being delivered to customers, reviews of it have begun to appear. For example, in one of them, they show how to open the Cybertruck's doors. This seems to be a problem for the car. There are no usual handles, and when opening, fingerprints remain on the doors. However, despite the criticism, the journey from the prototype in 2019 to the production car in 2023 is truly impressive. In the process of all this, the company went through a crisis of over-automation and experienced a real production hell. Musk and his team kept discovering new delays in the process of automated production and realized that many operations are actually cheaper and faster when performed by humans. Excessive automation was a mistake. My mistake. People are underrated, Elon later admitted. And yet he doesn't feel sorry for people and doesn't consider it a flaw. He doesn't mince words and doesn't feel any pangs of conscience. Firing employees, the layoffs at were quite telling. Musk discovered that several times fewer developers were actually working on the software, and he parted ways with the excess staff without any regret. Then he ordered to identify disloyal employees in other departments who met the same fate. Finally, he banned remote work. As a result, more than 80% of the employees left, some of whom did so of their own accord. Possessing an incredible ability to attract talent and unlock potential in people that they themselves sometimes don't even suspect, Musk sees people only as components of his vast system. Elon isn't that much of a fool. Although sometimes he says completely idiotic things. He just doesn't think about how his words affect people, but only about his mission. Of course, he understands people as objects for research. Gwynne Shotwell, president of Interim Chief Executive Officer SpaceX, who has worked with Elon for more than 20 years and is almost the only chief executive officer with whom Musk is willing to share power, speaks. For his employees, Elon formulated an algorithm and the rules that follow from it. I've become a broken record, but I still think the algorithm is useful, says Musk. The algorithm looks like this. First, question every requirement. Find the living person who formulated it and question their requirement, no matter how smart they are. Always do this, even if the requirement comes from me, and make the requirements less dumb. Second, remove every possible part and process. Most likely, you'll have to partially bring them back later. If you can't bring back at least 10%, it means you didn't remove enough. Third, simplify and optimize. This step should follow the second. A big mistake is to optimize details or processes that aren't really necessary in the first place. Fourth, accelerate. Any process can be sped up, but you should only do this after completing the first 3 steps. Fifth, automate. This is the very last step. Make sure all requirements have been questioned, unnecessary details and processes have been removed, and mistakes have been corrected. And here are the rules that follow from this algorithm. All managers must have practical experience. Otherwise, they are like a cavalry commander who cannot ride a horse, or a general who does not know how to use a sword. Friendship at work is dangerous. It should be avoided. Because of it, colleagues find it hard to argue and don't want to put a friend at risk. Making mistakes is normal, but not when caused by overconfidence. You can't ask your subordinates to do something you don't want to do yourself. You need to look for people with the right attitude toward work. Skills can be taught, but changing someone's attitude requires a brain transplant. A maniacal sense of urgency is the main principle of work. Rules are what are dictated by the laws of physics. Everything else is just recommendations. In recent decades, Musk has been seriously concerned about the danger that a careless attitude toward the development of artificial intelligence poses to the existence of humanity. Chatbots and other artificial intelligence systems, especially in the wrong hands, can be subjected to political manipulation, become propaganda tools, and create a real threat, Musk believes. Elon, together with entrepreneur Sam Altman, became a co-founder of a non-profit artificial intelligence research laboratory in 2015 and invested $100 million in it. We wanted to have something like a Linux version of artificial intelligence, which would not be controlled by one person or a corporation, Musk says. Our goal was to increase the likelihood of safe artificial intelligence development that would be beneficial for humanity. The idea of artificial intelligence alignment, which Musk and Altman discussed in detail, is to ensure that artificial intelligence corresponds to the values and goals of humanity. Similar to the novels of Musk's favorite, Isaac Asimov, robots should not harm humans. According to Musk, one way to ensure artificial intelligence safety is to closely tie bots to humans. Bots should become an extension of the will of specific people, not systems that can get out of control and form their own intentions. This idea became one of the reasons for creating the company founded by Musk to produce chips that allow connecting the human brain to a computer. In addition, Musk came to the conclusion that for the successful development of artificial intelligence, bots need to be given access to the maximum amount of real data on which they can learn. And the goldmine here is Tesla, which collects millions of frames of video recordings of drivers' actions in various situations every day. Another treasure trove of data, as Musk later realized, is Twitter, which by 2023 processes more than 500 million messages a day. Against the backdrop of disagreements over artificial intelligence, Elon Musk even ended his friendship with the founder, Larry Page, luring away the engineer-researcher Ilya Sutskever. Larry was very angry at me for personally hiring Ilya, and he didn't want to talk to me anymore, Musk says. And I told Larry, if you didn't treat artificial intelligence safety so carelessly, we wouldn't have to oppose each other. Elon Musk's growing interest in artificial intelligence was realized in the launch of several more related projects. Since 2021, Musk has been working on a humanoid robot, an early version of which was presented in September 2022. Musk believes that humanoid robots are capable of unlocking the economy to a quasi-infinite level, because they will take on work that people consider dangerous or boring. Another project is the supercomputer Dojo, which processes millions of Tesla videos to train a neural network that imitates the human brain. In addition, thoughts about artificial intelligence are still fueled by Musk's obsession with the idea of making cars fully autonomous. At first, all these projects were fairly independent, but eventually Musk brought them together, founding a company in the summer of 23 to create artificial general intelligence. Elon Musk, without a doubt, deserves the title of one of the most extraordinary, complex, and intelligent people on the planet. Stress, deadlines, and emotional dramas constantly accompany him. He is incapable of sitting idly by in all aspects of his life, including his personal affairs. Besides, lately, Musk has been concerned about the issue of birth rates. Demographic collapse due to low birth rates poses a much greater risk to civilization than global warming, said Musk. In 2022, people should reproduce more actively. Musk himself has already had 11 children. The first son, Alexander Nevada, with Canadian writer Justin Wilson, who died in 2002. And then with Canadian writer Justin Wilson, who died in 2002. And then 5 more children with her. Twins, Griffin and Xavier. And triplets, Kai, Demian, and Saxon. Another 5 children appeared for Muska in the last 3 years. A boy named Ix, and a girl named Y with Grames. Twins Strader and Azur with Shivon Zillis, and another boy with Grames. Technomechanicus, or just TAU. I'm doing my best to address the problem of insufficient population, wrote Musk on Twitter after the birth of Strader and Azur. At the same time, one of the most intriguing and little-known projects of Elon Musk is his school, called Adastra, which in Latin means "to the stars." Founded by Musk to educate his children and the children of his associates, this school represents his vision of ideal education. The Adastra School opened on the campus in Coturn in 2014. Soon after Musk took his 5 sons out of the Merman School for Gifted Children, he invited one of the Merman teachers, Joshua Dan, to run the new educational institution. In the first year of Adastra's operation, Musk's children, the twins born in 2004 and the triplets born in 2006, made up more than half of the student body, while the other children were from the families of employees. Later, Adastra expanded a little. By the end of 2018, more than 30 students aged 7 to 14 were receiving education there, including Musk's children. At this school, they study natural sciences, mathematics, robotics, and artificial intelligence. But they don't spend time studying foreign languages, because, according to the founder, very soon there will be real-time translation by artificial intelligence. Almost everything at Adastro is arranged unusually. There are no grades at all. Instead, students receive shares for specific results or completed projects. There's also secrecy surrounding the admission process to the school. At the moment, the school's website is closed to external users. But in 2020, information about admissions appeared there. The child was asked to fill out a questionnaire, which, among other things, asked whether any of their parents worked at SpaceX, Tesla, or Boring Company. In the 3 companies of Musk, parents' applications could be omitted, but it was mandatory to attach an example of a project or plan that demonstrated passion, ambition, and originality, as well as the child's reasoning on one of the suggested topics. All the issues raised in them are very much in the spirit of Musk. The first essay, titled Zlatovlaska, tells about 11 fictional planets. Children need to choose the 3 best and 3 worst options for establishing a human colony. For example, the lake describes an ecological disaster. Future students are asked to determine how much representatives of 6 sides are to blame for what happened: scientists, politicians, voters, and the media. The polluter is a shadowy figure, the master of the puppets, who is called a rich man, afraid that the new rules might affect his business empire. This is not just a school for their children, but an experimental platform for a new education model. Musk sees it as a laboratory where new teaching methods are developed which may possibly be used everywhere in the future. But family is not just children. For the richest man on the planet, it is also a family trust, a piggy bank with billions. The family fund of the founder of Tesla is arranged in a special way. If usually hundreds of employees manage a multi-billion capital, only 2 people handle Musk's fortune: Jared Burchell and lawyer Alex Spiro. The entrepreneur makes most of his investments in his own companies. Despite his connection with many of Musk's organizations and even his position at a neurotechnology company, Burchell's responsibilities are typical for a family office manager. He is more likely to be the formal head, company insiders confirm. He rarely visits the office and is not involved in daily operations. but he builds relationships between the billionaire and major banks, which approve him for huge loans. They are the main key to the success of the entrepreneur, who prefers to finance new projects with borrowed funds rather than with money earned from selling his own shares. Speaking about Burchell, the interviewees most often described him as sweet. But sometimes the tasks that the manager carries out on Musk's instructions contradict his sweet image, the publication writes. For example, in 2018, Burchell was searching for compromising material on the British speleologist Ansart, who had filed a lawsuit against the boss. The story of this episode is as follows. In 2018, a children's soccer team from Thailand, 12 kids aged 11 to 16, along with their coach, went on a tour of a cave complex. They were trapped in the cave by flooding. The media later called this operation the rescue of the century. There were two options: either teach the kids diving and bring them out one by one, or pump the water out of the cave. The only exit from the cave is flooded, and to even reach the rescuers' base, you have to swim underwater for about 2 kilometers. Not only was the water cold and dirty, but none of the kids could swim, so this option was left as a last resort. The second option also turned out to be insane, to pump all the water out of the cave. Doing this was almost impossible, because even the most powerful pumps probably wouldn't have been able to handle that much water. It was decided to wait. The rescuers delivered food and water to the kids, passed on notes from their parents, and provided oxygen tanks. It was assumed that in this mode, the children could survive for several months until the water receded. But then a new problem appeared. The level of carbon dioxide in the cave started to rise, and the rains intensified. A few days later, Musk announced that he had come up with a way to save the school children. For this, they constructed a submarine from a rocket body in record time and tested it in a swimming pool. Musk brought the submarine to Thailand to the flooded cave, but on site, the rescuers decided not to use the boat. Musk lashed out with criticism on Twitter, questioning the competence of the rescuers. After one of them, that very Vernon Ansart, called this proposal a public relations stunt. Musk called him pedo-guy. Ansart sued Musk for defamation, comparing the harassment he received from Musk's fans to a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Nevertheless, the judge ruled in favor of Musk, who claimed that he was not accusing Ansart of actual pedophilia, but was simply trying to insult him. But let's get back to Burchell. He is also involved in Musk's charitable initiatives, such as helping the Musk Foundation establish a $100 million grant for the X Prize. As a result of the competition, the money is supposed to go to a scientific team that develops a technology for capturing and storing carbon dioxide. In addition, with Burchell's participation, the foundation sponsored an organization that fights hunger in the state and donated millions of dollars for coronavirus research. The range of problems and questions that Elon Musk seeks to address is practically limitless. Because of this, some of his partners, like Reid Hoffman, the founder, notice a messiah complex in him. Hoffman, who knows Elon Musk very well, says that he is like Lewis, who once said, "I am the state." His whole approach to artificial intelligence comes down to the following. Artificial intelligence can only be saved if I create it. Hoffman believes that since humanity creates artificial intelligence in its own image and likeness, the principles and priorities of leaders in this field will matter. We want people without a messiah complex to be working on this. It was with Hoffman and Peter Thiel that they started a non-commercial project. Musk left the company in 2018, breaking his commitments for further funding. Basically, he called them all idiots and left, Hoffman recalls. The departure was devastating. "It was very hard," said Altman, the head. "I had to rethink a lot of things and spend a bunch of time to make sure we had enough funding." At the same time, the technological messiah has pretty serious problems with antidepressants. In 2018, it was reported that members of the board of directors became concerned about Musk's use of a prescription insomnia medication that can cause hallucinations. Earlier, He previously reported that he uses ketamine, which has gained popularity both as a treatment for depression and as a psychoactive substance for parties. Musk has already smoked weed on Joe Rogan's podcast, which led to a safety inspection by the authorities. He refused to comment on the reports about ketamine. And you can understand him in this, but he also didn't deny them. Immobilizing people with selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors happens too often, he wrote on Twitter, referring to the third-generation group of antidepressants. Judging by what I've seen with friends, the best option is ketamine taken from time to time. Colleagues suggest that in recent years, Musk has started using substances more often. And this, combined with his isolation and increasingly tense relations with the press, may amplify his tendency toward chaotic and impulsive statements and decisions. At the same time, doctors studying ketamine note that it can contribute to unpredictable behavior. Musk is interesting in all the glory of his endless complexities and contradictions, which are quite exhausting and unpleasant both for himself and for those around him. It would seem like a good idea to invent a button to control Musk's impulses. It could neutralize his offensive tweets, restrain reckless actions, and interrupt the demonic outbursts that leave no stone unturned. But could such a person achieve what the real Elon Musk has achieved? Could a normal person accomplish all these abnormal things? Sometimes, the greatest innovators are boys who can be reckless, off-putting, exhausting, and even toxic. They can also be crazy enough to think they can change the world. Thank you for watching, and if you found this documentary interesting, please rate it fairly. Well, if you have your own opinion about Elon Musk, share it in the comments. See you in the next episodes on our channel.